Will you pray with me? Lord, we ask that the words that are spoken here will touch the hearts and the ears of those that are listening. Amen. So today we're going to talk a little bit about our Kenya trip in light of the scriptures, 2 Corinthians 4, 1 through 15. We had an incredible time in Kenya. It was an experience like absolutely no other. But first I have a question for you. What would you do for missions if you had $46 billion? And I want you to think about that throughout the service and think of ways that you would use that much money, because that's a lot of money. So first we want to isolate in verse 8. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. While we were in Kenya, we experienced such incredible hospitality. In a country that has less opportunity than ours, the people are willing to give more of themselves than they have just to allow us to experience the best of their culture. That's not something that we generally find in our culture, is it? And in our pursuit of doing global mission work, we can often find ourselves in very dangerous situations. Verse 10 says, always carrying in the body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. This verse is written through Paul's experience, through his eyes. And it's believed to reflect the violence and the potential death that he faced through his entire missions journey. But this danger and violence didn't deter him. When I was getting ready to go to Kenya, I cannot tell you how many times I had somebody ask me, why are you going to Kenya? Kenya's dangerous. Something could happen while you're in Kenya. And that's true. But in missions, we are called to risk. It's not always a safe place to be. It's not always a safe place to work. And that doesn't mean that all of us have to run out to a war-ridden country to go work with people there. But that we do have to keep in mind that it is a risk and that you have to be willing to commit and make a risk. But why? Why missions? Why can't we just send all of our money? Why can't we have an overflowing offering plate to send to Kenya, to send to Haiti, so that they can do their own work? Well, bear with me. For what we proclaim is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, with ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. While we were on our trip, we had a very difficult and eye-opening experience with the Boma Rescue Center. We had a lot of difficulties getting to the center, and when we got there, we didn't have as much time as we had wanted because of traffic, which is crazy in Kenya, let me tell you. But with traffic and being the rainy season, we had difficulty getting there. But the Boma Center is located next to a large dump. It's like the dump of Nairobi, where all of the trash from all of Nairobi ends up. The children there can be found wandering and digging through the trash, trying to find food or something of value to sell. That was a very disturbing and very hard experience for us to watch. This is a place where, the Boma Center is a place where kids with drug addictions also can go, or those found rummaging through the waste. It provides a safe place for them to get food and shelter, and they educate the children while they're there to heal and learn. When preparing to go on our trip, we were asked what kinds of things we wanted to buy and bring to give to them. So we thought children, we'll get them stickers, we'll get them candy, we'll get them pencils, little things like that. I'll come back to that. As Americans, we are very much idolized in Kenya. It would be very easy for all of us to go into a new country, bringing all of our gifts and all of our knowledge to gift to them. It would be easy to take pity on the people we work with for having less opportunity and privilege than us, and to take a stance of wanting to come in and make their lives like ours. Especially when we go into a culture and they want to be like us and they talk about how much they love America. And one thing that I was always very mindful and intentional about bringing to their attention is that they have so many things in their culture that I wish we had in ours. No one culture or country is better than another. Missions isn't about money. Missions isn't about what fiscal benefits we can bring to those who have none. It's not about giving every person in the world the American dream. Missions is so much more than that. Missions is an exchange. We're going to a different place so that we can learn about the people and the culture there, and in turn, teach them about ours. We work side by side with them. What I learned in my time in Kenya is that no matter how poor the people I met were, I was really no better off than any of them. There were so many things that they were richer in: their desire to serve guests, their understanding of worship and attributing everything in creation to God, and their understanding that they have been given gifts from God and they are charged with using them to the best of their ability. I have a couple pictures. I got the opportunity to work with the Precious Blood High School. We were divided into groups, and we had to go teach different subjects, things like that. And these are some of the girls that I got to work with for 2 days at Precious Blood. They were some of the best girls I have ever met in my life. The one thing that I envy about Kenya was the education system and the emphasis that is put on education and how much the children there want to learn. They're not required to go to school. They get to go to school. They are given the opportunity to learn. And one particular experience, our first day teaching, we didn't really know what we were walking into. It was kind of thrown on us. Oh, you're going to go to the school and teach something. But we didn't really know what until we got there. And we were teaching secondary dominance, we were teaching how to analyze a piece of music. And a secondary dominant actually came up, and it wasn't on the lesson plan. But the girls were like, what is this? Teach us, help us figure it out. And in my head, I was thinking, they're not going to get it. This is going to be too hard. They're going to get frustrated. They're going to give up. And so we explained it several times, and the majority of them caught on pretty quickly. And then we moved on to the next subject. But there were girls all day long coming up to me and asking, I didn't quite get this. Can you explain it some more? Over and over and over again, probably 10 to 15 times, I had some of the same girls coming up to me and asking, I still don't get it. Can you explain it to me? It wasn't something they had to learn for their exam. It wasn't something they were going to have to learn till much later, but they wanted to learn. They wanted that experience. They wanted that knowledge from me, and it cost me nothing. It was simply an exchange, and in turn, they taught me what it means to yearn for education and to yearn for excellence. So going back to the Boma Center, once we were immersed in the culture, suddenly those gifts we had been bringing, those stickers, those pencils, everything that we had been so excited to bring to them meant almost nothing. We even felt embarrassed to take them to them. Yes, they were happy to get them, but stickers really didn't have a meaning to them. They didn't really understand what they were or what they were for. But giving a music lesson to the students at the schools meant more than buying them books and instruments. We may have come with the intent to teach, but we were also the students. When we went to the Boma Center, the kids didn't want anything from us but our time and attention. They danced for us. They got us dancing with them. And then they went on and they gave us a recorder recital with some of the girls. And they were so excited to share with us and to exchange with us that soon the candy that we had brought, the stickers that we had brought, were completely forgotten about. So that's why we can't just send money, send fiscal things, send material things. It's important that we get there. Sometimes marching into a new place, proclaiming, here's Jesus, he's going to take care of all your problems, just isn't an approach that works either. And in fact, I'd be willing to bet that it probably almost never works. But why? We have this incredible love for Christ, and we understand his healing and mighty power that can move mountains, and we are so eager to share that. But for someone who doesn't know him, it just doesn't make sense. How can a man I've never met do me any good when I can't feed my own children or give them a roof over their head or let alone an education? We have to meet people on their own playing field. We have to talk in languages that they understand, with models that they will understand. We have to show Christ through our actions by getting to know people on a deeper level and allowing them to know us, our innermost parts that make us vulnerable. When they see a Christ living through us, then the door opens to why we are who we are. And a desire to be like that begins to grow. And that is the part that they should idolize, not our American freedom, justice, land of opportunity, money, and other worldly things. They should idolize the Christian way we live, and in turn, Christ himself.
Jessica mentioned a little bit about the dancing, and that was one thing that I really enjoyed. I know not many of you know me very well, but I enjoy dancing a lot. I love dancing, and going over there and seeing their culture is surrounded so much by music and dance and praise. When we were in their mass service in church, they were dancing for joy, for God. And that's something that I think we lose a lot of times here in America. We sit in our pews and we open our hymnals and we turn to the pages. And where is that joy? I know a lot of people worship in different ways, but it was really electrifying to see them not shy away and push things away from the church, because we're supposed to praise God with our whole being, with all of what we can give. But that's just a little bit of a side note. I was going to read from verse 7, and this is from the NLT version, the translation. We now have this light shining in our hearts, but we ourselves are like fragile clay jars containing this treasure. This makes it clear that our great power is from God and not ourselves. So I know when the children were up here, we talked a little bit about, our clay jars, our ugly parts. I don't know if all of you could see what the box looked like that Jessica had, but it was just this brown paper bag, and it looked ugly. I have a question for you all. How many of you have ever done ceramics before? Quite a few. Okay, you surprised me. I wasn't sure that there were going to be some people who have ever done ceramics before. I took a ceramics class in high school, and it was a lot of fun. But let me tell you, it is hard. It's very difficult. I'll just describe it for you. You get this big lump of clay, just dirt basically, and it's dirty. It's just brown and it's wet. And you just plop it on the table beside you, and you have this big wheel. And the wheel has a plate inside, and the plate spins around. And you control the wheel with a pedal. And with the pedal, you can go faster or slower based on what speed you need. So you plop the clay onto the plate, and you start the plate going. And you use your hands to guide and mold the clay into the design that you have intended for it. Whether that's a teapot or a jewelry box or a vase. But does the clay know what its intended use is going to be? No. The clay doesn't know what it's going to be turned into. It's just clay. Now imagine yourself as that clay. Do you think it feels good when God, as the artist, puts his hands deep into your life, in the nitty-gritty parts that no one knows about? Don't we protest saying that we know that we were destined to be a vase or a jewelry box when God has intended for us to be a teapot? And we tell God, no, I'm not supposed to be a teapot, God. I'm supposed to be a vase. That's not God's plan. I remember many times in my own life, and I'm not very old, I'm only 20 years old, but I've come across many times in my own life where I've told God that I've figured it out. I know exactly what I'm going to do. And Heather, this kind of goes along with your transition too, coming out of high school. You go out of high school and you go into your life and you say, God, I know exactly what I'm going to do. You know, I'm sure we've all been there. And then what does God do? He laughs. He said, you only think that's what you're going to do, but your path goes this way. And when you aren't open to his crafting hand, you find yourself hardening. And you become like hard ceramics clay. And I don't know if any of you, those of you who have done ceramics, when you don't get the clay done in time, it just shrinks up and hardens and you can't use it. It becomes a lump of unusable, messy, brown clay simply because that's what you will become, simply because you were too stubborn to follow God's will and you dried out. In ancient times, like Jessica was mentioning to the children, the clay jars were used to hold scrolls and valuable documents. When God hides beautiful things inside of our clay pots, I think we're not only supposed to keep them safe, but we're also supposed to share those gifts with the world. I think of the talents parable that Jesus talks about. How those 3 men had their different things that their masters had given them. And the one buried his. And what did God say to him? You didn't do what I intended with your talents. I gave you those things so that you could share them and multiply them and grow them, so that you could further my kingdom, further my business. And you buried it. You kept it inside. And we, as clay pots, we have special things inside of us that we're supposed to share with people, that we're supposed to share with people across the world, or even your next door neighbor. This is one really important lesson that we learned in Kenya. A lot of the chamber choir music, I'm not sure if all of you were here when the chamber choir came to perform, but our music is very challenging. And I think that what speaks the most to that is that not everyone in the group are music majors. A lot of them actually are not in the music department at all. But when we got there, we were called to be leaders. For some people, that might have been scary because they had never been put in a leadership position before. But some of us, like Jessica and I, we both hold leadership positions within the choir. So some of us are used to talking in front of people. Some of us, no problem. Yeah, I'll do the prayer for this morning, or I'll do this. Some of that comes easily to some people, and some people that might be so terrifying. But when you're thrown into that situation, like we were in Kenya, we were working with the administration police band. And some of us had experience playing instruments and conducting, and some of us didn't. I got to work with the clarinet section, and I'm a flute player. So I only played clarinet in my classes that I had to pass to be for my education courses. But I'm in no way a clarinet experience with the clarinet. But after we started going, and I was nervous, I had to stand in front of them, and I was nervous. I was like, I don't know what I could share with them. I only know how to play flute. I don't play the clarinet. But as we kept going and went on, I discovered that I did have musical advice to offer them and technique that I could offer them in places that I didn't think that I had to offer. So when we were put in those positions, we realized quickly what our strengths and our weaknesses were. So when we were paired into different groups, like Jessica said, we had to go into situations that we weren't prepared for and just figure it out. We had to realize that God had given us treasured gifts, and we had to use them to the best of our ability. So once we got into the nitty-gritty of that moment, where it was kind of scary because we didn't have anyone to help us, that's when we discovered what we had to offer. It was really challenging, But overall, we learn so much more from that experience, from digging deep inside of you and figuring out what you have to offer to the world. And until you put yourself into positions where you may feel uncomfortable, it's going to take you longer to realize what's inside of your clay pot. It may be your talent to make an amazing casserole for your next door neighbor. It may be holding the door open before service starts. It may be doing your job at your business, in your cubicle, on your computer. You have no idea what impact you can have on people. But once you find your gift, it will be bigger than you ever could imagine it could be. When we were in Kenya, one of the choirs we worked with was called the parish choir, and they had prepared tea for us. They have tea all the time, every day, 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock, which I wish we could have here, because they stop everything and they just have tea time. It's really nice. So they had prepared tea for us after this Catholic Mass service we had just participated in, and I'm going to admit, it was very hot. The service had been confusing, and it was mostly in Swahili, so I didn't really know what was going on. I've never personally been to a Catholic Mass before, so it was my first time experiencing a Mass, and it was in Swahili. So I was confused. I was tired because it was hot, and we had been there all day. And I didn't want anything to do with having tea time that day. But we had to stay and drink hot tea. And it was 80 degrees out, which is uncomfortable. But I, along with the other people who had some of the same sentiments, grinned and bared it and enjoyed our tea. But when I actually allowed myself to enjoy the fellowship and the love that was poured into the food and the tea that they had prepared and that they were sharing with us, I began to feel very blessed and also a little bit shameful. Actually, a lot shameful for feeling like I just wanted to take a nap, for being selfish when these people were sharing what they had with me. It wasn't much. They just made tea and food. But after we finished tea, they began singing and dancing and asked us to join them. They sang songs of blessing and praise about us coming to visit them in Africa. They were so thankful that we could come and visit their culture and experience their culture. One particular woman who had taken a liking to me asked me to dance with her, and as we were dancing, she took off her necklace that was around her neck and placed it onto mine. And I was so humbled. It was like time stopped, and I truly realized why we were there. To share with each other, no matter how small the item or the time seemed. It made all the difference in the end.
So coming back to that question, did you guys think about it? If you had $46 billion for missions, what would you do with it? Would you build a school? Would you fund trips? Would you create programs like the Boma Rescue Center? $46 billion is a big number, and it means something. What would you guess the average tithing percentage in America is across the board? Anybody? 4%? 2? She's right. 2% is the average tithe across the board. So what does this $46 billion mean? If every church member in America tithed 10%, we would have $46 billion for missions. That's $46 billion to send out teams, to sponsor cultural exchange, education, sending teachers, bringing students here for short mission trips into our own country, sending teams to disaster areas to rebuild communities through programs like Impact Massillon. $46 billion. I said earlier, missions isn't about money, but money is a means to exchange. We can't throw money out in an attempt to just fix everything. But money is how we get where we need to be. This is how we send people out to have these exchanges. It's about giving of yourself in every way possible. Living on less, giving more. It's giving of your time, giving of your abilities, giving of what you have been given, and giving in the name of Christ. Amen.